Account Finance and Administration to order. We will take up the following items for approval. And I'm pinch hitting for Chair Ferrer today. Action item 1A is the approval of the minutes from the November 21, 2022 meeting. I move the approval of action item 1A. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Now address action item B, the policy calendar. Policy item B1 is a resolution to authorize purchase of Zoom licenses. Chancellor has asked that this item be postponed. I move to postpone indefinitely policy item B1. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Is there an explanation of does that mean that someone's Zoom license is going to turn off at
Who wants to?
an unpredictable moment?
Yeah, sure. No Zoom license is going to be turned off. It's just a technical issue. Nothing to do with anything else. Zoom is fine, and we have.
I see.
We have a contract that's.
You're just working things out.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, any other, yes, sure.
When does the current contract for the Zoom licenses
Don't
expire?
ask me, yes.
When does the current contract for Zoom licenses expire?
We have a year. We have a year.
Okay.
So we have plenty of time to bring it to this committee.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed.
I'll abstain.
Abstain? Abstain?
Abstain, yeah.
2 abstentions, but it's,
3, 2, yeah, you're fine.
we still pass,
Yeah.
yeah. So the
To postpone.
motion to postpone is passed. Policy item B2 is a resolution to approve the Personnel Matters Report of the Finance and Administration Committee. Assistant Vice Chancellor for Human Resources, Stephen Snyder, is available to provide further background on this item, to answer any questions as needed. I move the approval of policy item B2. Do I have a second? Any discussion? Mr. Berg?
Yeah. I'm a little concerned, and maybe this is the first place to bring it up. It may come up later, but it seems that we haven't gotten the memo. Our budgetary situation is not great. The city has already cut us back either 2 or 3 times. The mayor's executive budget is certainly not friendly to us. We don't know what's going to be in the governor's budget. And I'm looking through here, and there are an awful lot of salary changes. I assume they're increases and not decreases. It's hard to tell without knowing what the prior salary is. But, the question is, if we're facing some real financial straits, and it seems, given our enrollment and everything else we are, is this a time where we ought to be giving out increases for any reason whatsoever? And it comes up here a number of times with a number of increases, and I'm raising that as a matter for the committee.
Anyone want to comment? Sir?
Sure. You want to start or you want me to start? No, I'm happy to comment. Thank you, trustee, for raising this. Obviously, some of those increases that you're referring to are increases that are part of a retention. I mean, we have to continue to try to run the university, even during these very challenging budget times. So part of it is some of that. Some of the positions that you see there are things that are connected to at least, for example, areas where the university, in order to continue to do his work, those are very critical positions, and some of the new hires. But the reality is that, as you will hear from our financial report, and some of these are things that have happened prior to some of these budget situations that we now know, right? So there's a lag behind it. We are putting measures in place to address some of these things, because your point is well taken, and something that we will continue to address as we continue to make reports to this body about our financial situations. We will continue to give you the different plans that we're putting in place in order to continue to monitor to make sure that we're making the right kind of decisions from a financial perspective.
Yeah, I get.
So with these increases to individuals on the executive compensation plan, when we're talking about the budget, with these increases, why are we not having adequate increases for part-time workers such as adjuncts, graduate assistants, our PhD students? A lot of our students have the deficit in PhD student salaries is a lot less than all of the other universities in the area, and it is not comparable to the price of living in New York City. So why are we increasing prices for individuals on the executive compensation plan while leaving our adjuncts to struggle?
Respond?
You wanna take that on? You want me to take- Yeah.
So point of clarification, I believe that adjuncts fall into a different category.
They do.
So I think that compensation plan is different and apart from this plan.
And they're subject to collective
And
bargaining.
they're subject to.
And they're
collective
subject to a
bargaining.
contract, but
Collective bargaining, that's,
But Vice Chancellor, if I can just follow up with you on my point, we're going to hit June
No, but let's
30.
make sure does that at least address part of your question?
Well, this is the Committee on Finances, so it is part of the budget.
Yes.
Yes.
Jonathan, I'll add that that is something that we absolutely recognize in terms of the graduate stipend, what you're talking about, and have specifically added it into one of our requests to the governor. I agree with you. It's important that we continue to work on that. So I want you to know that that's not something that's not part of our work and our efforts at this moment, and it's important. I agree with you.
Thank you, Provost.
Yeah.
And Vice Chancellor, just to expand on my concern, we're coming up to June 30th very quickly. We're going to need a new budget on July 1st. And I'm very concerned we're going to get to June 30th or whenever our June meeting is, and there are going to be a lot of hard decisions to make, and we shouldn't be making them harder by adding expenses now. I mean, it's the end of January already. And, we've got to start, we've got to start preparing. We may not be falling off a cliff, but the downhill slope looks pretty steep going forward. And I'm just really very concerned about that.
And we are too, and we are taking steps to address that. I see the chancellor is here, so I don't know if the chancellor wants to add anything.
I just,
Came in the middle, so I don't know.
It had to do with, he sees a whole bunch of ECP increases.
Henry, why don't you re-ask
Yeah.
the question?
Yeah.
Ask the question again.
The concern is that there are a lot of, in the list, in the ECP, there were a lot of salary increases. And, without commenting on whether any one or not, is at a time when we're facing significant financial problems in the future, the city budget, which looks terrible, we don't know what the state is going. Should we be making increases at this point, or should we just be holding everything until we see where we are with money? I'm not saying that any of these people may not deserve, but we may be going back and asking everybody to give us back 5%. I mean, it's, why are we giving increases now in the last couple months when we ought to be saying, wait, things are tough and they're not going to get easier. The federal money's almost gone. City's cutting us back. Who knows what the state's going to do?
So, I mean, I wasn't part of the earlier conversation, so if I'm covering ground that was covered before, my apologies, right? I sort of walked in the middle of the engagement. We are working with our campuses based on their budget projections, and you'll see, I think the report is at the end, right? That we're gonna do
It's
that.
next.
And we've engaged with the campuses on saving programs, right? That both are geared to tighten controls and also get add revenue if appropriate. So we have that larger picture into account. Some of these increases too, remember that we had in the ECP category, they tend to be people that receive increases at the end when we solve all the labor contracts and all those things are done. So part of what you see now is part of a backlog, right, of individuals that have been waiting. We need to remain competitive in that arena too. We need to be able to retain individuals to do that. So that's, I think, a little bit of what you're seeing in that in that capsule, right, which is sort of delayed reaction of of holding the line there. But we're talking to each campus, looking at their budgets, having conversations about finances, personnel, all those things, right? Because we do know that, there are clouds there that don't look promising. We'll see what the budget process brings in terms of the state and the city, but we're being proactive in our end in taking measures to increase savings in the current year to be in a much better situation for the next one. And we've also talked to the president about things that we're going to be needing to take into action in the future too. So we have all those things into account, and happy to talk in more detail if needed.
At this point, I won't vote for anything that has any salary increases until we know better off where we are. That's just, my paranoia maybe more than anybody else's.
Yes, Mr. Klein.
Among the campuses, we know like what the biggest issue is amongst different facilities? Or like, is there like a reoccurring theme in terms of the budget?
I mean, each campus has a different fiscal scenario, right? And you'll be getting some of that detailed campus by campus info in the meeting too, so you'll be able to see that.
Mr. Bennett.
I will vote for this, and I'll vote for it because I've seen the budget cutting program that the finance office has got the campuses doing that is targeted towards positioning them to be able to make next year and then we'll have to do more and then do more. But there is a deliberate cutting program, and I saw it happen. I mean, I saw it happen at my campus, and I know it was part of a set of targets that were issued to all of the campuses. I also think that we shouldn't take an action that chooses a particular category of employees where we've led them. We went through a study of what the competitive salaries would be for the executive pay plan employees. I mean, that's not been a secret. We voted on that. And so now it comes time to do it, and I don't think we should just say, okay, we're going to take these people and take them out of line when the faculty are getting raises, and certainly the adjuncts are benefiting from the raise program that they got in the last round of labor agreements, and there'll be another round of labor agreements. And so I intend to vote for this.
I'm going to call myself for, I agree with Mr. Benton, and I agree with what Trustee Berger said also. I think we've got to be very vigilant. The forecast is not great and could be really not great, but to sort of almost seems like lashing out at this resolution, because we have it here, seems to me a mistake, and I'm reluctantly will go along with, I'm going to vote for it for exactly the reasons that Mr. Benton pledged, but we should not be naive. This is going to get rough, and we're entering labor negotiations, and we've got other big ticket items to go, and I'm fearful of what we're going to have to deal with in the next couple of meetings. Trustee Cortez Vasquez.
I just want to underscore that this is payments and commitments from past that we have not done, right? And it is also part of a retention strategy.
Is that true?
That's what we've been told twice.
Part of retention strategy.
We've been told that by the provost, we've been told that
Okay.
by the chief financial officer. So I trust that. And I don't think anybody's going into this eyes closed and not aware of the abyss that's gonna hit us. And I thank you for the enlightenment of the kind of budget process. But I don't want to make it seem as if we're doing this and not being mindful of the financial picture of the future. If the financial future is as bleak as we are all anticipating, hope it's not, but then again, I'm always optimistic, then we will have some austere things that we will have to take care of then. But I think not to move this forward, it's also almost being more irresponsible for people who have put themselves in the queue waiting for this kind of remediation as well as a part of our retention strategy. So I just want to be clear about that also. So I think, I agree with you conceptually, but in terms of being aware, but I think that we are aware, and I think this plan is not reflection of us not being aware of what the future may hold.
I'll just quickly say, we're doing some austere things right now. I mean, we're actually doing those things right now. It's not that we're waiting to find out. We know the wolf is at the door.
Any other discussion? All right, I move the approval of policy item B2. Well, we've already moved it as a discussion, I'm sorry. That's why I'm not the great Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One no and one abstention. Motion is carried. Okay, policy item B3 is a resolution to appoint, I'm going to botch the name, Gladys Schenemakers as a Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Chief Academic Officers at the School of Labor and Urban Studies. Assistant Vice Chair is available for any further background. I move the approval of policy item B3. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Question, is this filling an existing position or is this the creation of a new position?
I know Gladys has been, I mean, again,
I know she's been there, but the question is, are we creating a new position at this point? Or is this a position that was vacant that we're now filling?
let me just check
I,
something.
yeah,
She was an interim.
yeah, I think she was,
She was an interim.
I think she was an interim, and this is appointing her to the permanent position. I know she's been in this role since I've been in my
Yeah,
role,
she was
so.
in an interim position, and I think she's being appointed to a permanent position.
Thank
Let
you.
me say that in the affirmative.
Yeah, that's right. What's that? Sorry.
I was just saying, can we know that she was, and we're appointing her permanently?
Any other, yes?
Sure. Yeah, I just want to note that we've learned that the faculty at the School of Labor and Urban Studies strongly support this appointment. So we, on behalf of the faculty, we strongly support it.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the policy item? Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is passed. Policy item B4 is a resolution to appoint Mark Flower as Vice President for Finance and Administration, Chief Operating Officer at John Jay College. I move the approval of policy item B4.
I'll second it with enthusiasm.
Any discussion?
I will point out that we consolidated two positions, and he's doing both positions and is carrying a big load with grace and skill.
These are some of the things that you have, yeah. in
Yep.
this-
Part of the austerity.
Yep.
That sounds,
He's very austere.
yes, sir.
Serving as an adjunct at John Jay College, I've seen Mark Flowers' work, and he is more than suited for the position.
Anyone else? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Unanimously passed. Policy item B5 is a resolution to appoint Amadeo D'Angelo as a member of the CUNY of the City University of New York Civil Service Commission for a term commencing February 15th, 2023 through February 14th, 2029. Mr. D'Angelo is being recommended to serve as the third member of the Civil Service Commission. The appointment of Mr. D'Angelo will enable the university to continue to operate under the rules and regulations of its Civil Service Commission as approved by the New York State Education Law and is governed by the New York State Civil Service Law. Amadeo D'Angelo is a distinguished administrator, served the city of New York for more than 4 decades until his retirement in 2022. I move the approval of policy item B5. Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Policy item B6 is a resolution to appoint Derek Brazil as Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at York College. I move the approval of policy item B6. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. Policy item B7 is a resolution to appoint Karen Williams as Vice President, Student Affairs and Enrollment Management at York College. Excuse me. I move the approval of policy item B7. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously. No more items on the policy calendar. I will address section 2, information items. There's one information item on the agenda. Information item is 2A, which is the fiscal year 2023 mid-year financial report. University Executive Budget Director Catherine Abada is available to provide further information as needed. With no more items on the agenda, I move to adjourn the meeting. Second?
No, we don't adjourn.
You're not adjourning it. Kathy's going to do her presentation.
Right.
She's got to do the presentation.
Why I should not?
Wait.
You're trying too hard. You're trying too hard. These are the seven.
I love it.
She's so austere, she didn't have any numbers to tell us about.
God, the most important thing, okay.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
You did, very first.
Okay, so I'm going to walk through a presentation on the mid-year financial report, which we sent out a couple of weeks ago. So we will talk about the overview for fiscal '23, what it looks like at mid-year, touch a little bit upon the stimulus funds that colleges are still using, and then we'll look at some numbers on enrollment, staffing, tuition revenue, and expenses. So unfortunately, you're seeing that what has now become a familiar sign, financial hardship ahead. CUNY is continuing, and the colleges, to experience a lot of financial pressure, a lot of it resulting from the pandemic. Continuing public funding reductions. As was mentioned earlier, the city is doing a program to eliminate the gap peg reductions as part of an overall savings plan. And our CUNY community colleges are participating in that program. The colleges are continuing to see a loss of enrollment and tuition revenue, although that looks like it has slowed at this point, so that is a positive thing. And then just there do continue to be costs related to the pandemic, costs for COVID testing, for other health and safety measures on the campuses. And then some of the colleges are able to invest some of those funds in IT items and other things on campus. The university, all of our colleges, we do have plans in place to address the structural deficits that you see in the report, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through it. I have to remember to do this, sorry. Oh, yeah, thank you, Hector. Yes. So to the outstanding question, how are we going to achieve financial stability? So there's a multifaceted approach to this. With our fiscal '24 budget request, we are asking the state and city to fund our mandatory cost increases. Those are those costs that go up every single year due to inflation. The largest among those is fringe benefits. The city and state have been funding our fringe benefit expenses, and so, we hope to see that in the budgets for fiscal '24. Those aren't the only mandatory cost increases. Salaries do go up every year. There's inflation, and as we know, the inflation has increased dramatically, and so those are costs that the colleges are facing as well. We're asking the state and city to fund those. because every time they're not funded, it's basically a cut, right? You have to cut other expenses in order to fund those increases. The university has a number of enrollment and retention initiatives that are currently in place, looking to grow enrollment, to bring students, new students and students who have some credit but not a degree back to the university. We're using the $40 million in state strategic funding to fund those initiatives. Part of our budget request is asking the state to baseline that funding and also ask for additional funding so that we can expand those initiatives. And then finally, this last point notes that we are reporting a structural deficit of about $163 million. Colleges have put in place savings plans to work towards decreasing the structural deficit, which we saw in the fiscal '22 year-end report. I think colleges had to use about $240 million to close out the year. We're bringing that structural deficit down through measures such as enrollment increases, finding alternate streams of enrollment to bring in additional income. Again, back to the enrollment and retention initiatives. Colleges have their own initiatives in place to try to grow enrollment, and some of the colleges are going to see some positive results from that in the spring, so that the spring revenue is looking better now than it did at the beginning of the year, thereby helping to bring down that structural deficit. And then also cost reduction measures. So colleges are looking across the board to see where costs can be reduced, operations consolidated to bring down expenses. So we're projected to end the year with a balance of $112 million. Most of the colleges will have sufficient stimulus funds to close out structural deficits that they have. But we do have 4 schools that are ending with deficits, and we can see that there does continue to be a wide range of variation in the financial health at each of the colleges. And just the continuing enrollment declines and revenue loss, is compounding the pressure at the colleges. But like I said, we're thinking that those rates are slowing, and with work on enrollment initiatives, that work will continue and increase and hopefully result in positive measures on that end. And I'll talk about the 4 colleges with the structural deficits in a few minutes when we get to the summary page. So this slide provides just a high-level view of our resources and expenses and year-end balance. So on the left-hand side there, you can see that across the university, we're using about $4.1 billion to cover operations. That campus allocations number includes the projected stimulus usage. And then the right-hand slide shows expenditures. It shows that year-end balance of $112 million. What I will point out here is that, as you can see, the majority of our expenses are for personnel, so for salaries and related fringe benefit costs. And then just on the OTPS side, I'll just also mention that, again, back to the mandatory cost needs and the funding needs from the state and city. Those prices, unfortunately, are continuing to grow, and the increases are greater than we've seen in the last few years. Excuse me. So this is the overall summary page from the report. It shows the projected condition, year-end condition, what we're seeing at mid-year for each of the colleges. That total obligations column, it includes about $71 million in pandemic-related expenses, which presumably are one-time and will not contribute to the structural deficit going forward. As I mentioned, colleges are still using stimulus funds to cover health and safety measures at the campuses. Some of our campuses have larger balances in stimulus funds. They're able to do additional investments. You can see some of those numbers, particularly at Baruch, at Hunter. They're making, it's mainly IT investments that they're making at those colleges, software, structural changes to, bring up to date just the IT infrastructure. There's some online program investment there as well. The adjusted balance, as you can see, after we cover the pandemic-related expenses, is that $163 million. Colleges will use stimulus funds to cover the revenue loss that's contributing to that deficit. But as I mentioned, we do have those 4 colleges that are projecting year-end deficits, and that's Staten Island, York, the Graduate Center, and Kingsborough. What we've done this year is we have, I'm sorry?
Go to the next one.
Oh, no, stay here for a minute if you don't mind. Thanks. What we've done this year is we have met with each of the colleges over the fall to review their financial plans so that we have an understanding of the unique challenges that are happening at all of the colleges. So we know about the kind of the general challenges that are happening across the board, but we wanted to make sure we were understanding what was happening at each of the colleges. And then these 4 colleges, we have been working with them closely. We will be meeting with them on a regular basis for the rest of the year, asking them to submit updated financial plans to reflect changes that are happening at the colleges, changes that have an impact on the numbers. We will also be monitoring closely all of the savings plans that the colleges have submitted, and again, working very closely, really not just with these 4 colleges, but just give me 1 second, I'll finish this. But as you can see, some of the numbers for the other colleges are suggesting that in the out years, those colleges are going to be struggling financially too. So we will also be working closely with those colleges. And if I could just add one more thing. We know that the 4 colleges, many of the colleges, they have position management processes at the campuses. So they're evaluating all their hiring to assess how critical positions are and really only bringing on those positions that are critical for operations to continue, health and safety, student support services, and things of that nature.
So regarding the deficits at the 4 colleges, one college that I know about the details of the deficit is my college at the Graduate Center, that I've come to understand that multiple $1 million of the Graduate Center's deficit come from the 2% increase in adjunct salaries over years and graduate assistant salaries over years, that the central office has ceased funding the difference in the 2% over the years for the Graduate Center students to teach at the consortial colleges, leading to a very large deficit for the Graduate Center when these services are being provided to other colleges via the consortium. So does the central office have any plans to offset that deficit to allow our institution to continue to thrive? Because most of our labor comes from our graduate students, and if we look at the percentages, at least 20% of our students, 20% of our teaching force comes from the Graduate Center.
Yeah, so one difference between the Graduate Center and other colleges is there's not that same ability to generate tuition revenue. And the last round of collective bargaining, the first year of that was the last year of a 4-year predictable tuition policy where there were tuition increases, and some of those funds could be used to cover the collective bargaining costs. But to your point, the Graduate Center was not in the same position. We did, in fact, this year, the university did, in fact, this year provide the Graduate Center with additional funding to cover exactly those costs that you're talking about.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Let it go first, John.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. So, in terms of enrollment, I was wondering, how big is or how great is the CUNY presence in terms of the public colleges, public high schools surrounding these CUNY campuses? I was doing a recent study, and one student was quoted, for example, as saying, "I went to college because academic advisor just so happened to pull me over and ask me." So that's one way to increase enrollment, in my opinion, is to just have a stronger presence in high schools. A second one is how convenient is the enrollment process, because there was another student who said it took them up to 2 months to get help in terms of trying to re-enroll for college. And once they got email response, they never got a reply. So there may be a lot of students who are just, they want to go back to college, but they are just unable to.
Do you want me to answer it, or do you want to answer it? We are extensively engaged in the high schools around New York City and are actually looking at additional opportunities to engage deeply with the Catholic diocese and the different religious schools as well. That is everything literally back to middle school and elementary school in terms of tutoring and building the connection with CUNY, to days on our campuses. I mean, there's literally hundreds of activities in that space, because we totally agree with you. Of course, that is our number one market, in terms or source of students that enroll at CUNY. So we continue to identify new ways to engage. There is absolutely no question that we need to continue to get out of our own way in terms of admissions and applications and things like that. We are looking at greatly expediting that process to the point, hopefully at some point, where we will tell you, high school student, that you're admitted before you even apply. Because as long as you meet the standards of our school, to really create that engagement and ease of access, especially with our community colleges. So everything you say is absolutely correct. Those are critical areas for development, and we are spending a lot of time and effort identifying ways to expedite it and clear the path to make it as easy as it possibly can be.
Yeah, I gotta say, for myself, and I think for many board members, if not all of them, this is an enormous problem. The day I got on this board, I remember discussing with Chairman Thompson, what do we do to better the relationship between public high schools in New York City and CUNY, and to increase the numbers who are prepared. And it's something that some of us have spent a lifetime trying to deal with, and particularly secondary education in New York City public schools. You want to get a tutorial, ask Bill Thompson about his history and what he's tried to do. But to me,
That's the chancellor, who had an excellent program at Oscars.
yeah, but it's, to me, I couldn't echo, this is a huge priority, and I'm glad you brought it up.
And let me just add, because first, there's a number of very direct initiatives to address some of the things that you have identified. For example, additional staff that have come into the CUNY Reconnect program are precisely there to be able to be more agile in responding to students. Let it be on a phone call, let it be on an email, right? The different ways that students engage with folks, and we're bringing additional personnel in to be able to keep with the demand. And I don't want to steal any thunder, but you'll be hearing very good news about what the target was for that program initially. Great. And that we're over the target, even though we began the program with less than a year, right? Because we were given the money, but you have to hire the people. So we think that we're going to be in an even stronger position year two, right? With those resources, hopefully we'll get additional resources from the city to do this, because we have a proof of concept about the students, particularly returning students, in that front. My morning today was a meeting where we had Chancellor Banks and part of his senior team, and yours truly and our senior team, and we're talking about exactly some of those things. We have a couple of things in the hopper that we're finalizing, so we hope that we can show some additional moves for the existing senior class that would have a benefit in the enrollment for the summer and for the fall. And then a number of other things that are structural in terms of the way that we work together, eliminate barriers, and that we think are going to increase that pipeline, but along the lines of making it easier for the counselors to know more about CUNY. The Vice Chancellor Sarmiento and Roman have been working on an app so that the counselors will have information on real time about where the students are. So I think there's a number of things that, we're building as we go that are gonna make a difference in extracting that yield, and echoing also what the university provost mentioned, expanding the partnership is something that we've talked with this board with not just the Department of Education, but also with some of the parochial schools and some other schools too. So we have, I think all hands on deck on that enrollment front.
And I gotta say, I couldn't be more impressed by Chancellor Banks and his team and the mayor, in their commitment. The mayor's a product of New York City Public Schools and CUNY, and the chancellor is obviously a product also of New York City Public Schools. But it's got to be the biggest priority.
Another concern, it's very good that we're talking about bringing in students from the high schools, but we also have this challenge of enrolling the students we have.
Retention.
And the problem that the students, some of the colleges believe it's very important that some students take in-person classes, and they schedule the in-person classes, and then there's sort of a game of enrollment chicken about whether the students are going to give up and take the class in person or hold out for the possibility at the end of the enrollment period that the college will suddenly open up. And SUNY is deliberately, when listening to the SUNY University Faculty Senate, there are deliberate discussions that students from New York City can go to SUNY online. And so, they can be waiting for their CUNY college to let them into the class that they want. And SUNY's saying, hey, you don't have to move up here. You don't have to live in a dormitory. You can stay with your family. Come on over and go to SUNY, Purchase or SUNY wherever. And I mean, what I heard in the meeting before this about us trying to get our act together in terms of offering good online options for students, really critically important.
Yeah, if I can just add too, there's a huge push to do additional marketing campaigns, to expand the scope of where we recruit to a broader regional market. So this is neither the time nor the place to give you a detailed description of that, but I also will say Vice Chancellor Sarmiento is actually in the audience, the person who's tasked with leading all of these things, and we certainly, I know we have a subcommittee on enrollment coming up, so I would just encourage you to come to that and get an update.
Thank you.
And let me just say that in that enrollment chicken with SUNY, if it's online, they'll be paying about, if it's for four-year school, about $1,000 more in fees if they decide to go online to SUNY.
No competition.
I'm just, just the facts.
Okay, I have two clarifying questions. Can I share? My first question is, you had mentioned something in terms of fringe benefits and the collective bargaining about the state baselining. Can you explain that to me? Because I didn't believe the state baselines. The state just has a new budget every year. And so they don't baseline, city baselines, right? And then it's part of the next year's budget once it does get baseline. So could you explain that to me, or is it a request that we have it? I wasn't quite clear on that. And it's more, it's for clarification, because if we're planning on it.
Yeah, so in our request, we're asking the state and the city to fund our cost increases. It includes collective bargaining, includes increases in fringe benefits. I hear what you're saying about the state budget. It's an annual budget, but typically the state has been funding the fringe benefit increases, and that funding continues. There has not been
But they've
a
never
notion that we
done,
need to,
or correct me if I'm
re-request it.
wrong, but have they done the collective bargaining increase?
No,
All right.
no.
I just got a little confused with that. And then my other question, and it's a clarifying question, it's not an indictment or anything like that, but I hear the process with the universities and the austere budget and planning processes. Are we going through a similar process, and in terms of administration and a cost cutting and a cost saving, particularly going back to Trustee Berger's issue and concern. Because I hear about the universities, you know,
So
due
the same-
diligence, and I'm just wondering, what are we doing at the administrative?
You mean the central office, right? Yeah.
Central
Yeah,
administrative,
so
whatever
the
you
same,
call it.
the same, what has been done at the college, we're also doing for the central office.
Okay.
And across the university. Everyone has to submit a plan, including
Yeah.
every vice chancellor that's here has to submit a plan, and everyone has been put this. with the
Great,
same
so
savings plan.
I would say to make sure that that gets reflected,
Yes.
because it begs the question.
Yeah.
Right? And then the last clarifying question was, I can see you working on the structural deficit, you know, the big nut. But I don't see, and maybe I didn't understand it, the pathway out for the 4 universities. I mean, with the exception of the Graduate Center, the other ones are pretty significant.
Yeah.
And are these in the millions or the hundreds?
Millions.
Yeah, okay, so that even makes me more nervous. So can you elaborate a little bit more on what the pathway out is, or do we have one?
Well, more work to be done there.
Okay.
With those universities, more direct work needs to be done, and one that we will definitely share with this board, including a more direct approach when it comes to their hiring practice, more strict, you know, so there are more nuances there connected to how those particular 4 universities we are approaching their challenges, which are not small.
Yeah, because the issue that concerned me was this confluence of stimulus money gone, right? And then enrollment in those universities is also a challenge, so it's sort of like, okay, I don't see the pathway, but that concerns me, particularly given the abyss that we see. You know, so anyway, so those were my clarifying questions.
And we have both, as Hector mentioned, working very closely with the campuses that are in the red, right? In terms of, you know, you have to resubmit your financial plan. We're looking at all the hires, all that kind of stuff, like more micro, looking at some of the things, but also the office of the CFO has given out also some suggestions to the campuses about where, you know, savings can be generated in other areas that sometimes people don't look into some of them. You know, are we leaving some money on the table in terms of loans and things that students can take, or some of the things that we can do to help them come back? I mean, it's things of that nature. So, you know, we're trying to be helping everybody, you know, move forward, but then also being very detail-oriented with the ones that are in the deepest trouble.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll give that back. Thank you.
I'm back on duty.
Yes, thank you. So just a quick note, because I know we've talked about federal stimulus funds, is reflected in the page before. The colleges will use $235 million in federal stimulus funds to cover both those pandemic-related costs and lost revenue. And just the last point there, just to provide a little bit of detail about the other costs that colleges are covering with these stimulus funds. In addition to the health and safety measures, mental health services for students, professional development for faculty, online program development, student support and retention initiatives, and then, as I mentioned, investment in technology. Yeah.
So colleges are projected to lose $235 million in federal stimulus. So that's a hard number gone. It was there last year. It's not there this, because sometimes it's.
The use of the federal stimulus, yeah, once they use it, it's one-time money, it's done, it's used up.
That's, so that's even more dramatic than I thought. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah, some of the colleges will still carry over some balances that they'll
Right.
have, but yes, it's colleges
Yeah,
are using it up.
No, todavía no, so we do have time.
Yeah. For the federal stimulus, yes.
So it's use it or lose it.
Yes.
So the provost has lots of money for IT and
the challenge is that some of the categories are specified, so it's not, I mean, it's,
You saw that language of structural deficit,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So just turning to some detail on enrollment and tuition revenue. So as we talked about, enrollment is still declining, while the decline seems to be slowing, but there is still a decline. So from fall 21 to fall 22, FTE enrollment was down by 8%. And it was 8% at the senior colleges, 1% at the graduate and professional schools, 10% at the community colleges. Last year, the fall-to-fall decline was 16% at the community colleges, so just some data on showing that the decline seems to be slowing. The resulting tuition revenue loss associated with the enrollment loss is $57 million university-wide, $37 million at the senior colleges, about $22 million at the community colleges, and then revenue is slightly up at the graduate schools. A couple of the graduate schools have enrollment increases and are bringing in some additional revenue, which is always good. So this next slide shows the variation among the colleges when it comes to tuition revenue. So we've mentioned that the colleges are all kind of in different places, and at the senior colleges, we do have a college that is growing their tuition revenue by $2.4 million, and then the largest decrease is $8.6 million, and those percentage changes range from a positive 2% to a negative 11%. Again, wide variation at the community colleges as well. There's a slight increase at one of the colleges, and the largest decrease is the same level as at the senior colleges. It's that $8.6 million for one of the community colleges. And then the range of percentage changes is a positive 9% to a negative 20%, which I know is a large percentage. And then at the graduate and professional schools, the numbers aren't as large there. So there's a projected decrease of about $300,000 at one of the schools, a projected increase of about $800,000 at one school, and then percentage changes ranging from a negative, decrease of 7% to an increase of 53%. So this next slide provides a visual of the tuition revenue trends for the past 5 years. It shows the decline from 2019. And I'll just a brief comment on each of the pieces there. So that top thin yellow, I guess, slice is the graduate and professional schools. And you can see that there's actually growth in that number. There has been enrollment growth over the 5 years. Fiscal 20 was the last year of the 4-year predictable tuition policy, so there were tuition increases in that year. So that contributed to the increase at the graduate schools as well. Community colleges are down overall, due to the enrollment decreases. And senior colleges, the 5-year look shows the colleges in total being down as well, attributed also to enrollment. And there's just a little bit of fluctuation. You can see there's some growth from 2019 to 2020. That's the increase in tuition. And then from 20 to 21, there was some enrollment growth, particularly at the graduate level at some of our senior colleges that increased tuition revenue.
So we're talking about the increases in tuition that ended in 2020 when we had the tuition freeze, but right now we have a discussion in the state government that there's going to be tuition increases of up to 3% per year. What is the administration's input on this, and what is the outlook for the future with those tuition increases, and if they are going to happen? You want me to start? Yeah, so in our budget request, we did not ask for tuition increases, so our position was to hold tuition flat, and as I mentioned earlier, to ask the state and city to fund our mandatory increases and to fund, to provide some of the funding that we need to get out of the structural deficit and to grow.
you know, we have to wait and see what the state budget looks like. You know, yes, we saw those items in the governor's state of the state. The state budget should be coming out at the end of January, and we'll see what it looks like.
And just lastly, tuition is one of the many things that we look at as we put our budget together. And obviously, we're in the process of going through the, you know, working with our funding partners to look at where we end up in the budget. So a lot more to sort of come on that front.
Just to follow up, would the board be able to advocate for a tuition freeze?
That is up to the board.
It's not our question, yes.
What did you actually say?
Would the board be able to advocate for a tuition freeze to counteract the governor's input to increase tuition, as it did last time in 2020?
I can't speak for the board, but you made your point. Yes, Mr. Cohen.
Would a 3% increase like stifle enrollment further, or would it accelerate it, or do you feel like maybe the enrollment would still be slow down?
That's a good question.
I mean, again, right, this is all crystal ball, and an increase, for example, in the community colleges, where there's been no increase in tuition for 8 years, right? That 3% will still put us under Pell, right? So about 70, I mean, I don't know what the number of students in the community college, which is larger than the number for the system, the number of students there would actually do not feel the increase because TAP is what I meant to say, TAP will cover that, right? So it shouldn't impact, in the case of the community colleges, the decision of a vast majority of the students to apply. And then we don't know, because the budget is not done, whether there's going to be an increase in the TAP. So there's a lot of variables there that we don't know. I do know that in the case of the community college, which I think is clear, because the 3% would be lower than what the TAP, a vast majority of students would not see that. It would just be, sort of provided by the state. So we need to see the final mix of things to be able to determine that.
I'd comment, not answering you, but, look, we've been through this since we all got on the board, and the last thing in the world this board, and I'll speak for the entire board, wants to be party to is any tuition increases. We know full well that every dollar is precious, and if you increase it in a minor amount, even though it only covers a small percentage of the total students because of TAP and Pell, et cetera, it's still an onerous thing to do. In the scheme of things, though, the effort, and look, I love when we'll probably have demonstrations and yelling, and God bless. Lorraine and I yelled louder than you guys could ever do a couple of years ago. But the real effort should be put at the state and the city to yell and scream that CUNY is precious and worth more, and there should be more money in it. That's where the effort should go in. Look, and we're with you on the tuition increases, but it's not where the real action should be, so.
I have one last question. In terms of, I was looking at the spread. Thank you for that. That's very good detail. But the spreads are pretty wide, and they're in all of the categories. Are we going to have, this is a question to both the provost and the chancellor, you can't boil the ocean, right? So like in this enrollment, this enrollment challenge that we have, are we going to put an emphasis, to move one and then look at some of the others? I think targeting all of them seems almost giving you, my estimation, giving minimal impact rather than see one be more directionally correct versus the other two. I'm talking about the CUNY, the senior community, and the swings are pretty broad. So I was just wondering, if from a strategic point of view, is there a priority focus? And if not, it's not. But I was just curious.
If If you look at our marketing, it's CUNY-wide. It doesn't target specific schools. And what I think the key is to remove barriers through sort of what we were talking about with the applications, with the speed of financial aid, things that should affect all of our students across the board with artificial intelligence. Our systems are high touch and they need to be more automated to be able to speed up. We, at the moment, are taking too long to respond in different places. So I think the things we're doing there will have global implications for all CUNY campuses. Beyond that, I'll let the chancellor.
I mean, so again, it's two ways of looking at it. I mean, what the provost is saying, we're working on lifting all tides, right? All boats rise. That also allows more flexibility for also the central office to be helpful in that space, right? If there's emergency scenarios. But then in the working with the campuses, it would be probably complicated for us, if I hear you wrong, correct me, right? I think with the schools that have more challenges, we are both working on the cost cutting and revenue opportunities, right? But then also trying to dig down, right? So to that point, your local feeder schools, are you getting a better yield out of that, right? Where have you lost students? Let's look at that pipeline and let's see if there's something you can do to try to recapture some of those things. We think that that's a much more sort of organic way to be supportive for them to regain their footing. I don't know if that's the kind of thing that you were alluding to.
No, it wasn't, but it does beg the question that you're looking at senior colleges and community colleges. That's where the emphasis is, if I understand the provost and your comments together. And within those, you're targeting, I want to just have a better understanding, then you're targeting those with the greatest challenges, regardless of whether they fall into senior or community. And you're looking at, I'm just trying to get a sense of where is it that we're putting most of our effort. I understand you in the enrollment process, and that affects both both senior colleges and community colleges. But but those strategies go that far, and then you have these other complications. I was just wondering if there was a focus and a strategy on what to take on first, what to take on second.
Well, but so on the enrollment front, we are doing the entire brand and hope that moves forward. And like the provost said, enhancing the modality, sort of with the CUNY online, and that adds an entire real market that we have left on tap, right? That we can benefit from. So that will benefit all colleges in different ways. So that's one strategy. In terms of working detail with each campus, right? We're doing that both on the fiscal side, right? In terms of show me your financial plan, do that, and then also working with them on it's part of that challenge because of the enrollment, right? And how can we help you in what's specific about you, in addition to the efforts that we're doing collectively to bring everybody up? Does that make sense?
And the campuses are also promoting themselves. So in terms of the individual piece of it, which I think is what you're getting at, I will say it's extremely complicated on the community college versus senior, in part as we don't require an ACT, or we have fewer Regents exams, things like that. It pushes some of that enrollment to the senior colleges automatically, because students have fewer barriers that they have to cross to be admitted. So you see that nationally. The trend is and if you look at some of the private elites, you'll see that huge increase in applications, in part for that same phenomena. So it is challenging to figure out where that sweet spot is, but our goal is to go across the board.
If I understood you correctly, then the sweet spot is the community colleges. If I understood what you just said, unless I'm hearing it.
Because the senior colleges are more competitive in terms of some of them are not open access. They have specific, it is easier now to get in than it used to be with the diminishment of things like standardized exams nationally. So students are matriculating more quickly into the senior colleges because they have a better opportunity to get in. So it creates enrollment challenges for the community colleges.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Which means if that's where my greatest challenge is, well, should that be where my greatest emphasis is? That's basically what the question was from the very beginning.
Assuming the market will
Right.
play out in that direction, yeah.
So turning to expenses, so overall, expenses are projected to increase by 5%, or about $129 million. That covers both personal service expenses, which are projected to go up by $74 million, and then OTPS expenses, goods and services, which are projected to go up $55 million. Some of those increases are related to pandemic costs. And then on the personal service side, year-over-year, full-time staff is higher by 59 positions. When we do a fall comparison, I'll just point out that faculty positions during that time period are up by 168, and that's related to the $53 million we got for new faculty in the state budget. Colleges have been hiring and continue to hire those positions. And then non-teaching positions are down by 109.
Your meeting's in
What'd you say?
here.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
No, you're all good.
Okay, and then just a visual on the 5-year expense trends. You can see those numbers growing, collective bargaining increases, salary increases on the PS side, and then OTPS increases. A lot of that is inflation, and some of that is stimulus-related expenses. Full-time staffing, I just mentioned the 1-year change. So the 2-year change in full-time staffing, university-wide, we're down 605 positions. That's 3%. About 300 positions down at the
And
senior.
I just want to point out, that was intentional. So Henry, to get back to your question, right? When we really put some things in place, we could accomplish things that are connected to the point you were making earlier, so. And that saved us about $75 million.
Yeah, so 300 down at the senior colleges, about the same number down at the community colleges. Of course, it's a larger percentage at the community colleges, 5% compared to 3% at the senior colleges, and then graduate schools, there's a slight increase of 2% there. And then in the system office, we've decreased positions by 28, and that's at 3% as well.
What portion of those are faculty? What portion are?
Let me just see if I have the 2-year faculty. Sorry.
I think you have
In the report, the 2-year faculty, I don't know if I have that here. You want me to, okay, I'll do that, okay. And then the final page is just the visual of the 5-year trend in full-time staff. So you can see in 2019, we were at 20,000 positions. Currently, we're at 18,708, and that's a little over 6.5% decline.
So one thing that I've noticed at all of
Sorry?
the community colleges
Yeah.
lately is that positions have been consolidated and combined so that many different positions are being done by a single individual. As an example, we have multiple different vice president positions at many of the colleges being combined, and that one individual on the executive compensation plan is doing the duties of what used to be done by 2 or 3 different people. What is the plan in the long term in order to make sure that these duties aren't being overloaded onto one individual?
Yeah, no, so I mean, that's something that we, obviously have to keep an eye on, and I think each area of our operations does. This goes back a little bit to the conversation earlier about the increases. And we need to do both. We need to make sure we can consolidate where we can in order to reduce costs, and yet at the same time, we need to make sure that we can cover all of the critical functions that we need to cover. And so that's definitely an ongoing activity, both at the system office and throughout the colleges.
Thank you.
As we increase full-time faculty positions, have we been able to decrease the use of adjuncts?
Yes, as we bring more full-time faculty into the classroom to teach those courses, there would be the expectation that you would need fewer adjuncts. We'll know more, I think, once
At the end of this year.
Thank you, yes.
But that was a plan.
That,
Plan to get more full-time faculty.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So that you can get more services to students.
and to have some of the adjuncts apply for those positions and be
Right.
able to get that. And we had, you know, I mean, I know the provost had the
But
numbers,
it
I
was all
think, show
about
them.
student services.
But, yeah.
So regarding those positions that we're talking about with the decrease in adjuncts and the increase in full-time faculty, many adjuncts are ineligible to apply for some of these positions because some of these positions require a master's degree, whereas some of our adjuncts only have a bachelor's degree and then go straight into doctoral programs, which means that our doctoral students are ineligible to apply for many of these full-time faculty positions, despite the fact that the instructional staff manual states that a student in a doctoral program, for the purposes of applying for a full-time faculty position, should be treated as equivalent to a master's to an individual with a master's. And this raises the concern of that our doctoral students are unable to fully utilize the positions that are available to them at the university, and also that a lot of our doctoral students will be unable to get positions because if our adjunct positions are decreasing, then our doctoral students will be unable to be employed in certain positions.
I can tell you that overwhelmingly, the population of lecturers that were hired were existing adjunct, overwhelmingly. And so we're actually really proud of that. The specific situation that you identified, certainly something I'm not aware of. We can talk about that if you want. But the plan was to give a path to our adjuncts to full-time employment, and we definitely succeeded in that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is that, are you concluded? Any other questions? I mean, I rushed to try to adjourn the meeting before before the most important part of the thing.
Go ahead, now.
So now I'm going to move to adjourn. Second.
Second.
Anybody opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.